My name is Mary Lou Smith, and I'm offering the patient advocate perspective. Age is just a number. Number we may or may not give meaning to. When I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and over 65, my oncologist offered me my treatment options. I said my mother lived to be 98, my grandmother lived to be 98, 99, my father lived to be 95. I plan to live another 30 years. And what treatment is going to give me that best opportunity to do that? He said weekly paclitaxel and 3-week carboplatin. I said, well, then that's my treatment. It meant a 600-mile drive each week in the middle of the winter from Chicago, Illinois to Rochester, Minnesota, not a walk in the park. I was blessed with a husband who saw it as his job to get me through that ugly experience. A barrier to patient participation in clinical trials is their physician not offering a trial to them. People are different, and given the same circumstances, they will make different choices. Don't take that right away from them by deciding for them. I did participate in clinical trials during treatment, a surgical trial, a quality of life trial, and I donated tissue for research purposes. Why? Because I believe in giving back, because research interests me and I see it as the answer to getting a cure for cancer, and because I could. What are the motivations for older adults participating in clinical trials? The same as younger adults, they want to live. As a friend of mine said, I would be satisfied with 4 more good years. He achieved it by taking an experimental therapy that proved effective for him. Older adults also want to leave the world a better place in their grandchildren. We bear a heavy burden of bringing cancer into the family tree, or at least adding branches that are infected. Enabling access to research, describing desired outcomes, side effects, and burdens, and offering support that encourages adherence to therapy are all important to designing and implementing trials for older adults. We can increase access to trials by opening them in the community, or allowing patients to be enrolled in an academic medical center and then having the majority of their treatment on study in the community. Transportation is a big issue for participants because it increases cost, especially if you have to stay overnight at a hotel. Academic medical centers have Ronald McDonald houses for children and their families, Hope Lodges for cancer patients in treatment, and houses for transplant patients, but none for patients enrolled in clinical trials. Expanding inclusion or making arrangements with hotels in the area would be helpful. My treatment travel costs from Chicago to Rochester were approximately $10,000. Traveling a distance for participation could also mean the patient must ask a family member or friend to drive them to visits, tests, and treatments. Combine visits so that the participants don't have to make an extra trip just for a blood test. Including travel expenses in your trial budget could be another way to support more inclusion, especially among the underserved. Approach Uber or Lyft to provide local transportation. In the age of COVID, this is an even bigger issue because the participants are exposing themselves to the infection. Clinical trials are a treatment option for patients, be they young, old, or middle-aged. As a treatment choice, it requires balancing risk and benefit, survival, and quality of life. The risk that many older adults care about is loss of independence. Independence can be a result of an accumulation of side effects. There is research looking at resilience. Do you come back to the functioning you had before treatment? Being able to tell a patient that they will return to normal would be an important piece of information. Research that could provide that information would be meaningful to older adults and the people who love them. The results of the TAILORx sub-study showed that some women who received chemotherapy and/or endocrine therapy did not recover cognitive function after treatment. Cognitive function can mean loss of independence. It can also mean loss of a sense of identity, a sense of self. Losing who you are is very frightening. That is my most vivid memory of my treatment experience. I didn't feel like myself. Some was the lack of balance, the peripheral neuropathy, the need for transfusions, and stabbing myself in the stomach every day to ward off more blood clots in my legs. It isn't always one side effect that causes patients to stop treatment, but an accumulation of side effects. Everyone has a breaking point, and you get enough surprises, the balance on the scale tilts towards quality of life. Interaction of drugs with existing comorbidities can be important, and older adults have a greater likelihood of having comorbidities. This is why it's important to include cancer patients with comorbidities in clinical trials, so we have the information to inform future patients who will take this new drug if and when it reaches market approval. I would ask all clinicians to learn something about their patients' lives. Who are they? What are their life experiences? What is important to them? And how have they dealt with illness in the past? Just the fact you ask makes a patient feel they are important and worth keeping alive. The information from this discussion may help you to put their reactions to treatment and side effects in perspective. Offering a service that checks in on participants to see if they are experiencing any side effects, or help them complete forms or answer questions can also be helpful. Don't rely on electronic approaches. Sometimes people appreciate the human touch of a voice on the other end of the line that doesn't sound like Siri. Be cognizant of cost of drugs. Insurance and copays of drugs that are part of a regimen are not covered by the trial. I served on an IRB for 10 years. A woman came to us and asked us to provide a financial analysis for each patient. She participated in one of our trials, and it cost her $100,000 out of pocket. She could afford it. She'd do it again. But she was concerned that others might not be able to do so, and if they knew in advance, they might be able to seek help from a foundation or a pharma's support. The informed consent itself is a barrier to accrual. Its length, its language, and its tone all speak to a bureaucratic process, not to a caring healthcare team. New approaches such as an electronic layered consent form that gives information in bite-sized chunks and allows the viewer to learn at their own speed can be a reasonable strategy. Most informed consent documents I review have the statement, if you are injured, we will take care of you, but you and your insurance company will be responsible for the cost of that care. I believe this is unethical. Asking a participant to pay for the treatment caused by their participation in research is not the way to value the individual and their contribution. A friend of mine refused to enter a trial because of this exact clause in her consent form. We should communicate with participants as the trial progresses. Give them updates on accrual, closure, and trial results. Make them a research partner, not a subject. Include in your contract with the trial sponsor that their experimental drug, if found efficacious for a participant, will be available to that participant for as long as they are benefiting. They took the risk of the drug. Don't make them pay for it once it is approved, and or not have access to it while you are going through the approval process. We need to ask patients to participate, provide them with the information they need to make a decision, and then support them through the trial so they are able to complete and achieve a sense of purpose. They made a difference. Thank you for your time and attention.